Honorable House Chair,
Honorable members,
honorable
yes.
members, representative from the DCDT entities, stakeholders in the ICT community, people of South Africa that we serve, good morning. You see, Chairperson, I'm still confused. How do you support this budget? It confuses all of us. Your speech was right online, but you spoiled the whole thing. Sooner or later, somewhere along the line, the ANC must be fair itself and have this speech and say, we reject this budget. Look at us, Chairperson. Look at us, Chairperson. As MK Party, we vehemently reject this budget. Reason being, this department under this minister keeps on doing the same thing over and over and over again, but they expect different results. As MK, we're never gonna stoop that low. Let me take this opportunity to first and foremost congratulate Telkom for the appointment of Ms. Beauty Apleni as the CEO of OpenServe. A humble lady that started from the beginning at Telkom as a business analyst in data warehouse and climbed the ropes of Telkom, I mean. At least in the midst of SABC unilateral bill withdrawal, attempt of BE sanitization, CETA and Department of Home Affairs collaboration in trying to reverse the transversal so that private sector take over. In all this quagmire of the mess of the GNU, at least there is some hope that there are people that rises from the ashes and come and head entities by Telkom like Beauty Apleni. We humbly congratulate her. So, Chairperson, the Phalaphala saga and the Mkhwanazi saga need one solution only. It needs the unsealment of the funding of the CR17 bank statement so that South Africa will be saved. Everything must be transparent. This vote we are debating today, vote 30, is no ordinary budget line. It is a political battlefield over who controls the future of our digital economy. Is it the people or the connected one or the elite? Let me remind this House, revolution is not a tweet or is not a liberation, is not a liberated or the free Wi-Fi. As Mkhwanazi, we do not celebrate budget figures while our people remain digitally dispossessed. The 1.56 billion rand allocation, we don't know where it's going to. We see that 1.56 billion is being transferred to state-owned entities like Centec, Broadband and Faco, INCASA, GCIS and SAPO. But let's talk, what do we get in return? Are our rural villages connected to fiber? No. Is our youth trained in digital skills? No. Are our SOEs clean and functional as we speak? No. In fact, Chairperson, if you go to so many of these SOE today, you will find more tenders than technicians, more consultants than coders, and more spin doctors than signal strength. This is the digital capture and not the digital development. On GCIS, government is using this as its propaganda machine. GCIS received the budget with conditions. That alone is a red flag. They say they are communicating with the people, but GCIS is only communicating with the ANC. It's a PR machine for the political elite as well. We want to ask, how is this budget democratizing access to information? Why are community radio stations like Inkonjane FM being infiltrated by the officials board that is of conflict interest? This needs to be investigated again. We've been raising this thing and over as if we are not well in our head. These things need to be investigated. The collapse of the post office. In the post office, you can do turnaround strategy after turnaround strategy, new board, new executive, If you don't tighten the endless loophole of corruption there, people will come and go as they please. I've even been friendly DM to give advice that entity, I can tell you now, that's why we say we are not supporting the mediocre budget that keeps doing the same thing over and expect different results. You will change board CEOs, that entity, you need to be tightening up the endless corruption. That's a gold mine of the entity that this government doesn't see. And it's now going down the drain. And the couriers are now ripping it off. They're taking the staff that is experienced and hire them. Now they're talking about the change in direction of their business because this thing is falling apart right in our face. Let us not pretend that the post office is no longer a national asset. This entity is a crime scene on its own. It received 381 million rand bailout, and we still ask, where is the audit report? Why are our workers unpaid, branches closed, and communities left stranded? We as Mkhwanazi, we demand a forensic audit of all SAPO bailouts since 2019. We want to know who ate the people's money, who ate the people's mail and money as well. No budget without justice. This vote set aside 301 million for infrastructure and 700 million for ICT skills and capacity development. But ask any young person in Lusikisiki, in Nongoma, in Malamulele, or in Alexandra, where is the broadband? It's nowhere. Where is the Wi-Fi? Where is the training? This is not capacity development. It's an elite recycling. The same families, same network, same entrepreneurs are ones benefiting from these budgets. President Zuma said, you cannot just speak about transformation without understanding the power. This budget speaks of transformation in theory, but in practice, power remains in the hands of those who look like us, but they keep serving the capital. We must not confuse black faces with black power. As Mkhwanazi, we want a digital economy that serves the working class, not the white monopoly elite platforms wrapped in black PR. Our demands in this house are clear. Quarterly performance reports for all SOEs received DCDT funds, forensic audit into SAPO and GCIS spending, full disclosure of beneficiaries of ICT training programs with a provincial breakdown, a People's Digital Summit to redefine transformation in the sector, amendment of the MDDA Act to criminalize political interference and in the community media. In conclusion, Chairperson, we assist that we will not support the funding of the propaganda, the funding of the looting, and the funding of the betrayal.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Maybe let me begin by extending my apologies if I sound a bit irritable. I woke up this morning to a report that the public protector will be investigating matters relating to the Minister of Police, Senzo Mkhwanazi. I find it extremely disturbing because that institution has become one that justifies criminality. I want to urge the Honorable Zungula to go and withdraw his complaint because the outcome there is going to delegitimize that entire process. So I want us to at least speak to that. Chairperson, the Economic Freedom Fighters unequivocally rejects this proposed budget as it represents a persistent and systemic failure to close the digital divide and uphold access to information, which is a fundamental human right. I want to first begin by addressing the well-intentioned but misguided interpretation of the Money Bills Act. And the Honorable Kusela will remember we always have debates about this as it relates to the VAT process. So there is no preconditional support of a budget that is applicable. So you can't say that we are supporting a budget, whether it be the fiscal framework and revenue proposals or the division of revenue bill or the appropriations bill, with the assumption that the conditional support will be applied, because you won't have any recourse when that conditional support is not followed through. So I want to urge that this committee must not approach it in that manner. It is a well-meaning intended interpretation of the Money Bills Act, but it is one that is not going to follow through. And this relates to the non-alignment of the annual performance targets and the strategic plans. So it's the same logic that was used during the support of the fiscal framework process in terms of the second iteration of it, which contained the VAT increases. And I want us to not do the same process as well here. One of my particular concerns is that the conditional support of the budget vote is misaligned and misplaced because it applies to also with regards to the equity equivalent investment programs, as these are governed by legislation which is regulated by the Department of Trade and Industry and Competition, not the Department of Communications and Digital Technologies. On top of this, there's a commitment to create 20,000 jobs in the digital economy program, but no indication as to how these will be done over the medium term and how it relates to the target of 150,000 jobs, which is outlined in the strategic 5-year plan. The misplacement of a target regarding the equity equivalent programs may not be a coincidence, but forms part of what we think is the mischief we have been dealing with in the committee, where there's a proposed alignment of the Electronic Communications Act and the ICT sector code to allow for foreign satellite companies to subvert the ECA and 30% local ownership mandates using equity equivalents. This is a proposal we've objected to because the so-called alignment would require an amendment to legislation, and this cannot be achieved through a ministerial policy directive. In our view, this is all in service of allowing Starlink to operate in South Africa, and we must state that we will never allow Starlink, which has weaponized misinformation and capture of the White House, to erode US and South Africa's diplomatic relations in order to ease business access in South Africa. We view that as economic and diplomatic terrorism, and any company, even if Starlink were to meet equity equivalent requirements, there's a security threat that it poses that it must never be allowed to operate in South Africa, and we will never allow it to do so. Chairperson, now that we have dealt with legislative mischief, I want to address bread and butter issues affecting our people. The cost of data is not only expensive, but its existence as a perishable commodity in the hands of our people contributes to the violation of a human right to access to information. Considering that this has been a prominent conversation in society and that there's been a commitment to cut data costs but to no avail, and considering that the budget is part of affordable connectivity, and that this is not considered in this budget as part of affordable connectivity is alarming. This budget should have developed a strategic plan to establish a state-owned telecommunications company which would be afforded the adequate amount of spectrum to ensure our people have connectivity. The major telecommunications companies met with us as a committee and spent their time rationalizing as a matter of profit the expiry of data and airtime, spend their time avoiding explaining how they operate as financial service providers who sell funeral policies and life insurance, and avoiding the collusion between themselves and the regulator ICASA, where there's a revolving door between board members of ICASA and employment opportunities at mobile network operators. The commitment to profit maximization should have been an indication that we do not have sovereign control of the telecommunications sector, and we're at the mercy of companies who dictate when and how we use our data and airtime. Any budget that does not plan to remove our nation away from the dependency from MTN, Vodacom, Cell C is not worth the paper that it is written on. We had an auction of spectrum in 2022, and predictably, MTN and Vodacom, due to their financial muscle, dominated the acquisition of spectrum, meaning less competition to them and continued high prices of data. To then allocate 102 million for licensing in 2025-2026 through an auction process is an exercise in futility, because the same giants will dominate that auction process and maintain poor quality of services and high costs of data. The quality of service is appalling. In places like Matatiela, Leboakhoma, Zeerust, Pongola, our parents must literally climb mountains to call their grandchildren who are at universities and schools. If school children want to study, they must wait until midnight and 5 a.m. to be able to study because data is restricted to usage during those times. You cannot build a digitally inclusive society while relying solely on private sector control of telecommunications, and even worse, seeking to introduce entities such as Starlink, which leverage political disagreements to enter domestic markets while not complying with our laws. The chronic underinvestment in modernizing the SABC is disgraceful. The deteriorating Auckland Park building symbolizes the broader crisis. Low staff morale due to poor pay, stagnating creativity from a lack of strategic project funding, and the absence of innovation once seen, which created productions such as Yizo Yizo, Gazlam, Zone 14, Home Affairs, and many other compelling productions. The SABC lacks coherent funding model, and this is deeply troubling. The allocation of 7.8 billion on its own to the department is laughable and reflective of how this government lacks an appreciation of the role of the digital economy in modernization and job creation. So we therefore cannot in good conscience support this budget. Thank you very much.
Ke a leboga modulasetulo, ke Kobe. Ke rata go dumedisha tona ya kgoro, Ntate Malaji, ke re motlatsa tona yena Ntate Ngubane, ke a ba dumedisha. Maloloko ka moka parlamenteng, ke a le dumedisha, ba Afrika Borwa ke re thobela. Honorable House Chair, South Africa stands on a precipice of digital transformation, a shift that, if steered correctly, could redefine opportunity, service delivery, and national competitiveness. Budget Vote 30 presents a bold and necessary vision to bridge the digital divide, stimulate economic growth, and modernize our state institutions. Action SA acknowledges the Department of Communication and Digital Technology's alignment with the NDP 2030 and priorities of the 7th administration, including inclusive growth, reducing poverty, and rebuilding a capable and ethical state. The strategic pillars, from expanding broad-based access to developing digital skills and ensuring cybersecurity, are comprehensive and commendable. We particularly welcome the department's stated commitment to empowering SMMEs, increasing 5G and fiber connectivity, reducing data costs, and focusing on digital inclusion in underserved areas. If implemented effectively, these plans could contribute meaningfully to bridging South Africa's deepening digital divide. However, House Chair, we cannot ignore the serious and repeated concerns raised by the Portfolio Committee, concerns that cast significant doubt on the department's capacity to deliver on its ambitions. The department's track record is troubling, with chronic underperformance, 4,000 schools still disconnected since 2015, yet targets for 50,000 schools are claimed. Key legislative reforms such as the Electronic Communications Act and SABC bill have been delayed for years, and unfunded mandates, including the critical SA Connect program, which President has publicly committed to, still lacks adequate budget allocation. The failure to ensure policy certainty leaves regulators like ICASA unable to act decisively, and ineffective oversight of entities such as CETA, South African Post Office, USASA continue to hemorrhage public funds with little consequence of the reform. The department's targets are vague, unmeasurable, and misaligned with its annual performance plan. There remains no clear path to implementation, no credible accountability mechanisms, and no assurance that digital transformation won't continue to be delayed by litigation, leadership churn, and infrastructural failure. Chairperson, Action SA recognizes the urgency of digital transformation, but we remain deeply concerned that the department is not structurally or financially equipped to meet the demands of this critical portfolio. Minister, even your own GNU partners do not believe you are taking them anywhere. Therefore, we reserve our position to Budget Vote 30 at this time. Our final decision will hinge on a credible commitment from the department to implement overdue policy reforms, ensure better governance, and address chronic failures that have long plagued the sector. Thank you, House Chair.
House Chairperson, Honorable Minister, fellow South Africans, Baholo Dumelang. Minister, Malazi, a year ago, South Africans delivered a clear mandate that they were tired of stagnation and demanded a government that works for them. Minister, you only have one job, and that job is to rescue South Africa. As alluded by the chairperson of this portfolio committee, Uslalo Othandegayo, this department has had budgets approved over many years, yet the lack of political will to put South Africa first has brought us to this point, with an outdated legislation as the biggest reason for this stagnation. Setting up a clear vision for the sector now lies in your capable shoulders. And today, you have set this out in this budget. We trust you, Minister, to use your executive authority to rewrite the history of this important service delivery department. Your mission in this department is to ensure that South Africans have accessible and affordable connectivity, that government IT services work effectively, and that South Africa is well positioned for economic growth and job creation through the fourth industrial revolution. Allow me to break down this mission, Minister. On ensuring accessible community, the sad state of our country is that a reported 3 million young people aged between 15 and 25 are not in education, not in employment, or not in training. This paints a dire picture for our future. It should be the role of this department to ensure that a child born in the dusty streets of Soweto, like myself, will have the same opportunity to access the internet and its benefit, just as any other child born into opportunity. In our society, the circumstances of our births must not and should never determine our future, but instead the hunger for one's success should. Our promise to create an equal opportunity society must be kept, Minister. The DA welcomes that the department has a major agenda reform ahead. The department has various entities with overlapping mandates. This wastes money, wastes taxpayers' funds, and indeed undermines productivity. The measure of the BBI and Centec have been on the agenda since the previous administration. Something must happen, something must give. There is now political consensus on this, that their measure to create a state infrastructure agency must proceed without delay. In merging BBI and Centec, the department can consolidate its resources in building infrastructure projects. This will mean better ICT infrastructure for South Africans across the country. The duplication of these entities has slowed down the infrastructure building while costing South Africans more money. In addition, a viable funding model for the South African Broadcasting Corporation must be achieved. We call for a resolution on the SABC bill so that we can proceed with this effort to give clarity on the financial situation of the state broadcaster. The success of the SABC will remain meaningless if South Africans are not able to access the SABC and get credible information. With the rise of mis and disinformation, it is more important that the SABC fills this gap. And this is not a constitutional imperative, but something that will strengthen our democracy. Per the State of the Nation address, where President promised South Africans better working government services, the minister has already started the implementation of this effort. The relaxation of SITA regulations to allow government departments to directly procure ICT services will go a long way in ensuring that days where citizens were turned back from government services because the system is offline are over. These regulations will see government departments operating optimally to provide benefits to citizens who normally spend their hard-earned money on transport to access government services to be told the system is offline. So we thank you, Minister, because no more system is offline. Further, we cannot succeed in creating a digitally industrialized economy if our regulations stifle market competition. A prominent example is BEE regulations. We welcome the draft regulations introduced by Minister Mkhwanazi on equity equivalent investment programs to address this shortcoming. This will allow investors an additional pathway to market access into South Africa through making social investments without sacrificing at least 30% of their ownership. All South Africans deserve affordable high-speed internet. One's geography should not determine that. The insistence by members of the committee that this is done to accommodate one company speaks to your narrow worldview and your practices, where your organizations are known to tailor-make specifications to suit preferred persons or companies. We do not operate like that. Minister, Minister, the work of the Film and Publication Board is really understated. The world around has become more digitized. We need to protect children from harmful, inappropriate content. Streaming services, which are the future of entertainment, remain unregulated in our country, leaving a large gap. This requires our collective and urgent attention. Over a year, while considerable work has been achieved, there remains pressing challenges, namely the post office and the post bank. We remain concerned about the future of post office and we also acknowledge that a delicate balance between public need and state resources must be struck. The fiscus has completely run out of funds for bailouts, while the need for accessible postal services remain. We trust that the working group that the minister has created with the National Treasury will secure a viable future for the post office through private-public partnerships. We welcome the reported exit of the business rescue practitioners as post bank.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Your time has expired.
Support the budget.